There's nothing quite like a bowl of chicken noodle soup when the weather starts to turn chilly. So today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple chicken noodle soup that is very flexible, meaning that you can really make a lot of changes depending on what is in your fridge and depending on your dietary needs. Welcome to Hymns and Home. I'm Melissa, wife, mom, professional musician, and blogger at hymnsandhome.com. Join me as I share inspiration for modern cottage living and my love of all things homemade and thrifted. From decor and DIY to vintage, thrifting, cooking, and gardening, here you'll find the resources you need to create your very own modern cottage. In our family, I'm the one who's gluten-free, and the rest of my family eats gluten. So what I like to do, that was actually recommended to me, that was my oven, what I like to do that's actually recommended to me by an Instagram follower, which has really worked well for us, is to make the noodles separate from the rest of the chicken noodle soup. So that way I can make the main soup, and then I can make two different kinds of noodles for everybody in our family. So because my husband especially doesn't like the gluten-free taste, and my kids like the regular noodles too, so I will make regular noodles for them and gluten-free noodles for me. You can also change this based on if you're dairy-free. You can use dairy-free butter, which is what I'm going to do, or you can use regular butter. It's very, very flexible. This also makes terrific leftovers, which is a major win in my book. Another great thing about this recipe is that you can really use up stuff that's in your fridge. So like if you have a bag of baby carrots you're working on, you can use that up. I'm actually going to use leftover rotisserie chicken that we had last night. And while I do use boxed broth, you can certainly use homemade broth. That would be extra tasty. So first things first, we're gonna get our pot on the stove. And this really is such a simple recipe. So we're gonna get our pot on the stove, we're gonna get our butter melting. Now I would typically use real butter, but right now my husband has given up dairy just as an experimental thing. So I'm actually just gonna use some Earth Balance, and it works just as well. All right, so we're just gonna plop about a tablespoon, give or take, into the pot. Get that on. And next we are gonna chop up some onion. So you need about a half a cup of chopped onion, but you know, if I have a whole onion, I just stick in the whole onion. It doesn't really matter. These are really small, so I'm just gonna use 3 of these. We're also gonna need about half a cup of chopped celery. And again, this is really flexible, so just whatever amount you personally want is fine. Always make sure you wash your celery. It's always pretty dirty. Cut off those ends. You can just add those to the compost pile. For celery, I always like to just split it down the center like this and then cut it this way. Anytime you're chopping anything, you just want to make sure you're keeping your fingers tucked under and your thumb back, just so you don't accidentally catch yourself. See how my knuckles are going to stop me before I get to my fingers? I think I remember learning that from Sarah Moulton on Food Network. Anybody else watch her? Oh, I can hear my butter sizzling over there. I'm going to add this in just a second. Get these softening. And I just had this butter going over medium heat, so we're going to add our onions. Celery. Love that nice sizzle. All right, we're gonna let the onions and celery soften in the butter, sizzle for a little bit, and right now we're going to chop our garlic and our carrots. You could certainly use whole carrots for this. I just happen to have baby carrots that we need to use up. So just nice little carrot rings, circles. It is such a gorgeous fall day here today. Like, this is the first really fall day we've had. I mean, I guess yesterday was very fall too, but so I have the windows open, and if you hear yelling, it's because my husband and the kids are playing ball outside. So I think my husband just got a home run into the neighbor's yard. So that is what's going on. Carrot overboard. That is what's going on outside. Also, while our onions and celery are softening, we're gonna get our water starting to boil for our noodles. I once heard it said that you always want your water to be waiting on you. You don't want to be waiting on your water. And I really like that phrase because it's just so true. So those are pretty well soft. Now we're gonna go ahead and add our garlic and spices, because you want to add them ahead of time before you add your liquid, because cooking directly in a fat source helps bring out the flavor of the herbs and the spices. I'm gonna share a dark secret with you here. For the last 2 years, I have been using a jar of pre-minced garlic. And I know, like, in the world of trying to be healthy and natural, that's like not necessarily a good thing because it has a preservative in it. But I tell you what, in this busy season of life, this is one little thing that I have done that has just saved me so much aggravation, because for some reason, mincing garlic makes me cranky like no other. And I think it's just the way it sticks to my fingers. I don't know why. It's just one of those like weird things that, I don't know, really just bothers me. So I have allowed myself this one little moment of grace here in just using pre-minced garlic, because it saves me from being cranky. Okay, so I added about the equivalent of like 2 garlic cloves or so. So I'm gonna add in my basil, about a teaspoon or so, give or take. And then some oregano. I'm gonna add in about a teaspoon of oregano as well. Don't worry about the salt and pepper right now. We'll add that at the end when we're seasoning. Okay. And I always like to have my stock on hand so I can halt the cooking really quickly so I don't burn my garlic. So for this, I'm using Pacific Foods vegetable broth, the low sodium one. It's very clean ingredients, just like real ingredients on here. So I like that. So we're gonna add about 2 cups of that, which is about half a container. And then for the chicken stock, I just use the organic chicken stock from Costco. Now, looking at the ingredients, it's mostly good. It does use natural roasted flavor, which I know when you get into like the natural flavors on ingredient lists, they're not as natural as they would want you to think. But you know, all you can do is the best you can do, and this is what I've got, so this is what we're working with. We're gonna dump the whole quart in, so 4 cups worth. And this is really so flexible again. I mean, if you wanna use more vegetable broth than chicken broth, or just straight up chicken broth, that's fine too. I think you're gonna get a better taste with a combination of chicken broth and vegetable broth. But you know, just do whatever you can do. And I actually changed my mind. I'm gonna dump the rest of this vegetable broth in as well, just because I don't wanna have to open a second container of chicken broth. Now, I do have a little trick on saving chicken broth, or broths in general, that I will show you sometime, which I think is kind of fun. But for now, I'm just gonna use one of each. At this point, we're gonna add our carrots. Make sure that when you add your carrots, the water doesn't splash up on you. And now we're gonna move on to pickin' chicken, as my mom used to like to call it. We had this game when I was little, I think, called pickin' chicken. And so it just kind of stuck that whenever we had a chicken that needed the meat picked off of it, we would say pickin' chicken, you know? Just one of those family things. So I'm just gonna take the chicken from our leftover rotisserie chicken last night and just tear it all up into the pot. And as you're doing this step, you can go ahead and start increasing your heat so you're that much closer to boiling, because we're gonna bring this to a boil in just a minute. You know, sometime too, if you have chicken for dinner, just chop up the rest of it and stick it in a freezer container and pop it in the freezer. And then when you want to make chicken noodle soup, all you have to do is pull it out of the freezer. You literally don't even have to thaw it. You can just dump it into your hot stock and it will thaw and it'll be great, it'll be quick. All right, we're gonna pop the lid on, bring that to a boil. All right, so it looks like our water for our noodles is starting to boil, so I'm gonna go ahead and boil those. Usually I would make 2 separate kinds of noodles, like I said, one glutinous, one gluten-free for me, but tonight I'm actually just gonna use these, which are bonza noodles. I get these at Costco. They're actually made from garbanzo beans, or chickpeas, whichever you wanna call them, and I think they're really great. My husband can tolerate them. They're not his favorite, but he doesn't hate them either, so tonight we're just gonna use these. They cook up in about 8 minutes, and they have a ton of protein in them, which I think is awesome. While that is cooking, I am going to really quickly whip up some gluten-free biscuits. These are super duper simple. And the recipe is by There Is Life After Wheat. I've linked it below. But it is super simple. It's just gluten-free flour, baking powder, salt, and then it calls for whipping cream. But to make it dairy-free, I use coconut cream. And to get the coconut cream, I just skim the cream off of the top of a can of coconut milk. Oh, it looks like our soup is boiling. We're gonna turn that down to just a simmer. And we're gonna simmer it for like 15 minutes or so, just so the carrots can get tender. And this is full fat coconut milk. And I can barely get the 2/3 cup out of 1 can. All right, we're gonna go ahead and drain our noodles. Just gonna use a fork to mix it up. I don't really have time for a fancy cutter. So I usually just cut it into about 6 sections. Put these on. Okay, now this has been simmering. We're gonna give it a stir, and then we're gonna just season it with salt and pepper.